Welcome back. On our last video, we introduced the notion of using Xsolver or using Solver in Excel as a means or as a tool for our processes of linear programming. The advantage is obvious in that it takes the emphasis away from the graphing component, and it lets a pretty sophisticated tool do some work for us. So what I've got in front of you here with the shared screen is an Excel look where that first problem that we were looking at in the PowerPoint together is going to be presented. I'm going to show you how we can use Solver to basically go ahead and complete our linear programming task. If you'll remember from the previous problem, we agreed to define variables X and Y. So I let X represent the number of flyers these folks are going to make. I let Y represent the number of brochures they were going to make. For your convenience, I've got the problem kind of over in a blue text box over here. We can pull it up and use it as we need. The objective function, we're going to be able to make a $10 profit for every packet of flyers and a $20 profit for every packet of brochures. And so what you see on the screen is I've set up this cell over here in E7 that I'm hovering over here. And what it will do is it will calculate the value of that objective function for values that will be found for both X and Y. And those guys are back up here in cells E5 and F5. The constraints, I put them up for us visually in terms of paper. Unfortunately, I got my constraints on the Excel sheet a little bit out of order with the constraints over here in the text box. The first one for paper is actually the 20x plus 10y less than or equal to 500. I corresponded that down here with LHS for left-hand side, RHS for right-hand side. So you can see that what we're going to be able to figure out is that constraint basically says if we were to take 20 times the number of flyers made and add to that 10 times the number of brochures made, we must have a total sum that is less than or equal to 500. Constraint relative to hours, it took 2 hours to do each one of the flyers, and took 3 hours to do a brochure, and we have a max at 72 hours. That's actually the third constraint listed down here in the constraint text box. And the last constraint for us is that we've got ink at 1 unit per flyer packet and 3 units for brochure packets. And again, a max at 60 units of ink available. So what we're going to do is we're going to run Solver on this particular problem, and it will find for us the values for X and Y that maximize our profit, which is actually represented by our objective function. There is a small problem, apparently, depending upon what version of Excel you're running, where Solver shows up on your Excel screen may be a bit different. The PowerPoint that I showed you previously, I was using my desktop, and so that I could run this video, I went ahead and installed Solver on my laptop. And I'd like to point out that Solver on my laptop is not on the home ribbon. It's in fact on the data ribbon. So let me click on that, and that'll get us to a place where I can show you it's all the way over here to the right-hand side. And I'm going to click on Solver. We're going to go ahead and solve this problem. Solver brings up some issues for us to contend with. The first is, where is your objective function? In what cell do you have it? And I've taken the liberty of already entering that for us. So our objective function is tracking in cell F7. So I've entered that up here. All right, where are your variables? Well, my variables are over here. They're in E5 and F5. And again, I've taken the liberty of entering that for us. What do you have for constraints? Well, I have 3. I have this left side being less than or equal to, and it's actually relatively easy to enter these. You click on a cell, you add a constraint, and it gives you the option for less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. I went ahead and made certain that in all cases we chose less than or equal to. In this particular context, we want to make sure that none of the variables are negative. So I click this, and that means that we don't need to necessarily say X is greater than 0, or I'm sorry, greater than or equal to 0, and Y is greater than or equal to 0. Those constraints are already built into this particular. So, all right, I think we're ready to run. We're going to go ahead and see what happens. We've entered where the objective function is. And again, when you get a chance to play around with this particular file, I'm going to include it in the resources folder. So have some fun with it. Check it out and see what we got going on. But I'm going to, with no further ado, let me click solve. And you see that it has found a solution. I'm going to say, okay, I would like to keep that solution. And if you remember previously, there were no numbers in these two cells. We now happen to have values in those two cells, and I have the solution to my maximization problem. I know now that if I sell 12 packets of flyers and 16 packets of brochures, that will in fact maximize my objective function and would make me $440 in profit. So that takes care of the solution to example one. I'm going to include this particular file. You can have some fun with it, check it out, and hopefully if you have any questions, you can shoot me an email. Thanks for popping by, and we'll see you again soon with the finish of the PowerPoint and one more shot at Excel as we wrap out Unit 5. See you then.